Boker Tov, good morning everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Mark Twain once said, "I'm an old man and I've known many troubles, but most of them never happen." We know that there's nothing to fear but fear itself. This week's Torah portion contains some of the admonitions and the curses and the hardships that will befall the Jewish people throughout our long and bitter exile. And one of the verses says, "Ufachadata yomam v'layla," you will be fearful day and night. V'lo tamin b'chayecha, you will not believe in your life. The Torah describes a scenario where you're living in constant fear. And this is one of the harshest curses, because even when there's nothing to fear, you're constantly living in fear. You know, at the night of Passover Seder, we celebrate our freedom. And the way we do it is by inclining and leaning on our left side, especially when we drink the 4 cups of wine, but throughout the meal we lean. The question is, why is the posture of leaning a symbol of freedom? And the answer is because a slave is always fearful of his master, and therefore he's always living with tension, standing erect in fear of what may happen next. When a person can lean back, relax, smile, it shows that they're truly free internally. You know, there's a famous popular song that says, Kol olam kulo, the whole world is a very narrow bridge. Gesher tzar miyod, v'ha'ikar, and the main thing, v'ha'ikar, and the main thing, lo lefached, is not to be afraid. Lo lefached klal, never to be afraid. And the question is, can you live with no fear whatsoever? After all, fear is like salt. A little bit of salt is good for the dish. Too much salt ruins the dish. A little bit of fear in life is important. It keeps you vigilant, it keeps you alert. But too much fear destroys your life. So what did Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who wrote the words to this song, mean when he said there's nothing to fear at all? The world is a narrow bridge and there's nothing to fear at all. But the truth is, this song is not quoting correctly. If you go back to the source in Likutei Moharan, where Rabbi Nachman wrote this, he doesn't say lo lefached, he says lo lehisfached. Lehisfached means don't cause yourself to be afraid. Don't induce fear unnecessarily through worry and lack of trust and faith in God, that you're constantly anxious and nervous and worry and neurotic. As someone once said, what's the difference between someone who is neurotic, someone who's psychotic, and a therapist? A neurotic builds castles in the sky. A psychotic person lives in those castles, and the therapist collects the rent. And therefore fear is part of life. But self-induced fear, constantly being afraid, lehitpached, causing yourself unnecessary fear because you lack confidence and trust in Hashem, that is where Rabbi Nachman says there's no room for that in life at all. You know, your posture tells a lot about you. When you stand tight and erect, like a soldier, you're afraid, or like a slave. But then there's another posture that the Torah portion talks about, and that is a downtrodden. The verse says, V'yisha ashluk v'ratzotz kol hayamim, you'll be pursued and downtrodden and bent over. Sometimes a person walks around looking like he is overwhelmed with life's burdens. And therefore the greatest blessing is when you can sit with your head erect, relaxing, leaning, reclining, showing that you have confidence and you have trust in Hashem. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when his wife passed away, thousands of mourners came to offer condolences. And one day the Rebbitzins, the Rebbe's wife's aides, her nurses, African-American women, came to console the Rebbe. And they were greeted by the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Leibel Groner. They started to cry over the passing of the Rebbitzin, the wife of the Rebbe. And Rabbi Groner said, "I'm so sorry for the loss. I know you were very close to her." And they said, "We're really crying for the Rebbe, not for the Rebbitzin." And they proceeded to say that the Rebbe would come home every day after a long day's work in the office, and the Rebbe would be answering questions and challenges from Jews around the world, getting hundreds and hundreds of letters a day and having meetings. And he said the Rebbe would come in bent over, like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. But then he would sit down to dinner with his wife, and suddenly he would sit up erect. His light came back to his face. He began to smile. He would recline. He would relax. And they saw the way the Rebbitzin would bring the Rebbe back to life again, bringing joy into his smile. He said, we cry for the Rebbe that he won't have his Rebbetzin to come home to. Every one of us must always carry ourselves in a way that exudes our trust. Yes, life has its challenges, its burdens, but ultimately we could raise our heads to our Father in heaven. We could have confidence, never living in fear or in doubt. Have a wonderful day.